They fear your aura because it reveals their lies. You're not intimidating. You're simply fully awake. In a world that's still hitting snooze, people don't know how to name it, but they feel it. They look at you and say, "There's something about you." And they're right. But it's not style, it's not status, it's not small talk. It's your aura, the invisible truth you carry that can't be faked, not the filtered, glittery glow they flex on social media, but the silent frequency that announces your presence before you even speak. It's the way the room shifts when you enter, because your very energy whispers, "I've met my darkness, and I'm not afraid of yours." Carl Jung understood this. He knew that when you become whole, not perfect, but whole, your presence becomes dangerous. Not because you hurt people, but because your very existence exposes the lies they live by. Your calm shatters their chaos. Your honesty triggers their masks. Your stillness, it unsettles the noise they've worshipped their whole life. And here's the truth, most people would rather hate you than face the mirror you become. But this isn't ego. This is energy dominance. This is alignment. This is the psychology of a soul on fire. So if you've ever been called too much, if your silence made others uncomfortable, if your truth pushed people away, you're not broken. You're just vibrating at a frequency most people aren't built to handle. They don't fear you. They fear the part of themselves you awaken. And now it's time to decode the 13 signs that prove your aura is not just powerful, it's uncontainable. Through the deepest insights of Carl Jung, let's go beyond the surface, into the energy they feel but can't explain. Chapter 1. Your aura isn't just energy, it's a mirror. You don't walk into a room, you awaken it. Have you ever entered a space and suddenly, silence? Eyes shift, conversations pause, energy tightens, no words exchanged. Yet something shifted. That's not arrogance. That's not delusion. That's your aura speaking before your lips ever do. Carl Jung said, "We are not just bodies wrapped in skin. We are living, breathing fields of psychological energy. And when your inner world becomes aligned, when the war inside you turns to peace, your very presence becomes undeniable. Not because you try to be seen, but because your truth becomes louder than their noise. This isn't about charisma. This isn't about extroversion or making a scene. This is about authenticity so raw, so whole, that it shakes the illusion off people who haven't met themselves yet. You don't perform, you exist, and your existence mirrors what others are running from. Your silence speaks louder than their speeches. Your groundedness makes their masks fall off. Your calm becomes a storm for those who thrive in chaos. And the reason most people look at you strange is because your presence doesn't entertain the lies they've built their identity around. Your aura doesn't flatter. It reflects. It doesn't beg for attention. It commands it, subtly, powerfully, unapologetically. You don't carry mystery. You carry magnetism. And magnetism is uncomfortable for people who haven't yet realized their own light. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. Carl Jung. When you've sat in the fire of your own healing, you don't fear other people's shadows. And that makes you a mirror, a living reflection of who they could be if they dared to evolve. So if they pull away, let them. If they react harshly, understand them. Your aura isn't too much. It's just too true. And the world? It's still addicted to fakeness. Chapter 2. Authenticity is disturbing, especially in a world addicted to masks. The truth doesn't need to shout, it just needs to stand still. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." And he was right. Because in today's world, where curated feeds are more trusted than character, where filters matter more than feelings, where people decorate their masks and call it identity, authenticity doesn't just stand out. It disturbs. So when someone like you walks in, someone who has faced their demons instead of denying them, someone who has sat with their shame, healed their wounds and chosen truth over image, you don't just enter a room. You activate it. You trigger the silence people have been avoiding. You shine light on the shadows they've hidden for years. You don't say much, but your very existence whispers, "I know who I am." Do you? And that question, It rattles the people who don't want the answer. It's not that you're intimidating, it's that you're aligned, your thoughts, your feelings, your choices, all flowing from the same inner truth. That alignment creates an energy so calm, so rooted, so untouchable. It feels dangerous to those who are fragmented inside. They won't admit it, but their body language will betray them. Suddenly they avoid eye contact. Their jokes turn awkward. Their smiles feel forced. Why? Because they can't fake it around you. They sense something ancient in you, a soul that has burned, broken, rebuilt, and come back clearer. They sense the stillness of someone who doesn't need approval to feel worthy. They sense a presence that doesn't chase, but attracts. And that presence, it exposes everything they've been avoiding within themselves. Authenticity is powerful, not because it demands attention, but because it silently dismantles everything fake around it. You are that dismantling force. You are the mirror that doesn't flatter, but reveals. You are the energy that doesn't perform, but penetrates. And in a world addicted to applause, performance, and persona, that kind of realness, it feels like an earthquake. So if people pull away, if they act strange around you, if they ghost you, gossip about you, or mislabel your strength as arrogance, understand this. They're not reacting to you. They're reacting to the version of themselves they're not ready to meet. And you're just being real. Chapter 3. Wholeness over perfection. Why you feel misunderstood. You weren't born to fit in. You were born to wake others up. If you've ever been told, you're too much, you're too intense, you think too deeply, that's not rejection. That's recognition. A subtle, unconscious signal from people who've only been exposed to surfaces, and now they're standing in front of the ocean. You. This world teaches people how to perform, how to stay likable, digestible, small, smile on cue, numb the truth, wear the mask. But you walked away from that script. Not because it was easy, but because something in your soul refused to live a lie. Carl Jung taught us that the true journey is not about becoming a perfect version of yourself. It's about becoming whole. That means facing the parts of yourself you were taught to hide, sitting with your shadows, loving your anger, owning your grief, reclaiming your silence, and standing, finally, as one integrated being. But make no mistake, wholeness doesn't come with applause, it comes with isolation. Because most people are not ready to meet someone who doesn't need their approval to feel alive. You're not broken, you're just awake. And in a world addicted to noise, depth feels threatening. They say, you're too much. But what they really mean is, you make me feel everything I've been avoiding. You see, when you become whole, you stop performing. You stop shrinking to make others feel big. You stop explaining your boundaries, your silence, your standards. You just become. You just are. And that authentic presence, the one that doesn't beg, doesn't boast, just exists, becomes a mirror that terrifies those still fractured within. They live in pieces. You've become peace. That's why they pull away. You're not intense. You're real in a world where fakeness is a survival mechanism. You're not dramatic. You're awake in a world that numbs every sacred emotion with scrolling, gossip, and distraction. You're not too deep. You just refuse to float on the surface anymore. And yes, it's lonely. But that loneliness is not emptiness, it's sacred space, it's where transformation happens. Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. Carl Jung. You've outgrown shallow conversations. You crave truth, silence, meaning, and that makes you feel like an outsider. But you're not lost. You're just walking a road most people are too afraid to take. Let them misunderstand you. Let them label you. Let them walk away. Because at the end of the day, your goal was never to be liked by everyone. It was to become yourself, completely, unapologetically, powerfully. And that mission is already in motion. Chapter 4. Projection is real and you're the target. You didn't hurt them. You revealed what's already hurting inside them. You ever felt like someone suddenly switched up on you? One day they admire your strength. The next they say you're arrogant. One moment they feel inspired by your clarity. The next they accuse you of acting superior. What changed? Not you. Them. Or more precisely, their perception of you. Because here's a brutal truth Carl Jung exposed. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. When people refuse to face their own inner pain, their shame, their fears, their guilt, their jealousy, they project it. And the moment you walk in with inner peace, clarity, and alignment, you unknowingly become their target. Not because you did something wrong, but because your presence made them feel something they've buried for years. This is what Jung called the shadow. All the parts of ourselves we suppress, deny, or hate get stored in the unconscious mind. But here's the catch. The shadow doesn't stay silent. It needs a stage, a screen, a scapegoat, and often you become that screen. You've probably been blamed for things you never said, judged for energy you never gave, misunderstood, misquoted, misrepresented, for simply standing in your truth. And that truth? It threatens people living in delusion. So instead of dealing with their own wounds, they make you the problem. They'll twist your boundaries into accusations. They'll paint your confidence as ego. They'll say, you changed, when really, you just grew past their comfort zone. But hear this. That is not your burden. That is projection. That is their chaos, not yours. Your energy is clear. Your intentions are clean. Your aura is grounded. But to someone with an unsettled spirit, even peace feels like a threat. Why? Because peace highlights the war within them. Because truth unmasks the lies they've wrapped around their identity. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Carl Jung. You're not their enemy. You're their mirror. But not everyone is ready to see their reflection. So what do? They smash the mirror. They walk away. They talk behind your back. Because it's easier to destroy the messenger than decode the message. But here's what you need to remember. Don't internalize it. Don't shrink because of someone else's emotional projections. You are not the villain in a story they created to avoid self-awareness. You were just being real in a room full of repressed souls. So stay grounded. Keep your heart open, but your boundaries firm. Observe everything. Absorb nothing. Because projection is real, but so is your clarity. So is your truth, and so is your purpose, which does not require permission from the wounded to move forward. Chapter 5. The Weight of a Clean Aura. Why Strangers React. Your energy introduces you before you ever speak, and sometimes it shakes people to their core. Ever had someone spill their life story to you within 5 minutes of meeting? Ever noticed how strangers either get drawn to you instantly or become defensive for no reason? Ever felt a strange tension in the room without saying a single word? That's not random. That's your aura doing what words never could. See, when your energy is clean, when you've done the inner work, you emit a presence that goes deeper than personality. Your aura becomes a kind of spiritual X-ray. It doesn't just see people, it feels them. It bypasses their persona and connects directly with their unspoken truth. And that can be either liberating or terrifying. Some people will feel safe around you instantly, because for the first time they don't have to pretend. They don't have to explain their sadness, fake a smile, or guard their wounds. They'll breathe easier in your presence, without knowing why, and they'll say things like, I don't know why I'm telling you this. I've never told anyone, but... That's your aura opening a space their soul has been begging for. But others, they'll feel exposed, uncomfortable, triggered, angry even. Because you didn't just walk into their life, you activated something inside them they weren't ready to face. Your calm will challenge their chaos. Your clarity will confront their confusion. Your authenticity will shake their mask. And instead of thanking you, they'll resent you. Why? Because your presence reminds them of the parts of themselves they've buried. And Carl Jung said it perfectly. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But most people don't want understanding. They want comfort. And your energy, pure, silent, aligned, disrupts their comfort zone. You've probably noticed it in crowded rooms. You don't speak much, but you shift the atmosphere. People glance at you repeatedly. Some are drawn in. Some are thrown off. That's not ego. That's energetic resonance. Because when your inner frequency is high, your aura becomes a mirror, one that reflects truth without apology. You're not here to be liked. You're not here to blend in. You're here to radiate truth, and in doing so, awaken something ancient in others, whether they're ready or not. Some will thank you. Some will blame you. But either way, they will never forget you because you weren't just another person. You were a shift, a frequency, a glimpse of what it feels like to live with no mask. So remember this. You are not too intense. You are not too emotional. You are not too deep. You are just real in a world where most are rehearsing. And you're not here to fix people. You're here to be fully, fiercely, unapologetically you. And sometimes being that real is the most healing and the most triggering thing you can ever offer. Chapter 6. You don't just enter a room, you change it. You weren't born to be noticed, you were born to be felt. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the atmosphere shift? Not because you said a word, not because you demanded attention, but because your presence, raw, silent, grounded, announced itself without sound. People pause. They turn. Some stare, unsure why. Some get quiet. Some suddenly change posture or energy. That's the invisible impact of an aligned soul. And that's not arrogance. That's aura. A clean aura is more powerful than a loud voice. It doesn't entertain, it penetrates. Carl Jung believed that when a person completes the process of individuation, when they embrace their light and shadow, their pain and purpose, they become coherent on the inside. And coherence is rare, because coherence means you're not split anymore. You're not pretending. You're not hiding. You've become whole. And wholeness carries weight. You don't just walk into a space, you recalibrate it. Your stillness speaks louder than noise. Your silence shouts more truth than 1,000 words. And your gaze? It feels like ancient memory. People don't understand what it is about you. They just feel it. And that feeling, it's a combination of peace, power, and something they can't name. Even animals react. Children look twice. Because their intuition isn't blocked by ego, they can sense what adults ignore. There's something different about you. Not in how you talk, but in how you exist. You've become aligned. You've faced your shadows. You've processed pain that others still run from. You've walked through fire and didn't come back empty. You came back radiating stillness. And that stillness? That is what sets you apart. Because we live in a world where people are constantly vibrating in anxiety, fear, distraction, and performance. When you show up with centered energy, you don't fit in. You stand out, not visually, but energetically. You trigger people's nervous systems. Some feel instantly safe around you. Some feel exposed, because your vibe doesn't just coexist, it commands. And it's not about dominance, it's about truth. You carry a frequency that says, I know who I am. I've met my demons. I'm no longer afraid of yours. That energy doesn't need to chase validation. It doesn't need to argue. It doesn't need to explain. It simply walks in, and the room adjusts. You're not here to blend in. You're not here to play small, so others feel comfortable. You're here to shift the temperature, to carry peace in a chaotic world, to hold presence when others panic, to remind people, not with your words but with your being, that real power is silent. So if people react to you, don't be surprised. You didn't ask for attention, you just showed up in your full, untamed, unedited truth. And truth always leaves an impact. Chapter 7. You trigger vulnerability without trying. Some people hear your silence and still feel understood. That's not magic. That's your aura. Have you ever sat quietly beside someone, and they suddenly started telling you things they've never said out loud? Have you had strangers look you in the eye and, without knowing why, start confessing their fears, regrets, traumas, and dreams? It's not a coincidence. That's your aura creating something sacred, a field where truth feels safe to emerge. In a world full of filters and fakery, your raw presence becomes a rare sanctuary. You don't need crystals, incense, or a therapy license. You carry a kind of energetic permission that says, you can take off the mask here. I see you. And people feel that, somatically, spiritually, intuitively. Their nervous system relaxes, their soul exhales. Because you're not judging, you're not reacting, you're just being real. And that realness becomes a mirror. One that says, you're allowed to feel without apologizing. You're allowed to be whole, not perfect. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And when you step into that privilege, you unknowingly give others permission to do the same." But here's the hidden truth most people miss. Being that safe space is sacred, but it's also heavy. You'll attract both the honest and the wounded, the seekers and the dumpers, the awakened and the avoidant. Some will open with reverence, others will offload pain and vanish. They'll treat your soul like a landfill, not because you're weak, but because they've never learned boundaries. So let's be clear, you are not a dumping ground. You are not responsible for everyone's healing. You're not obligated to hold emotional weight that isn't yours. You are a mirror, a guide, an invitation to truth, not a therapist in disguise. Your job is to protect your light while radiating truth, not to carry the wounds of the world. Yes, people will be drawn to you. Yes, they will open up to you. But you must learn to discern who's seeking growth and who's just seeking relief, who respects your space and who drains it. Even the brightest soul needs boundaries. Even the calmest presence needs protection. Even the most healing energy must protect itself from emotional hijacking. You are powerful, but even healers need healing. Even mirrors need rest. Even you, the one everyone turns to, deserve peace. Let them feel seen, let them feel safe, but don't lose yourself in their storm. You didn't come here to carry the world. You came here to anchor your truth so deeply that it transforms every room without costing your soul. So guard your energy, set the boundary, speak the no, and always remember, you are a sacred space, not for everyone, but for those ready to be real. Chapter 8. You are rare. And rarity disturbs the imitation game. You weren't born to follow the script. You were born to break it. We live in a world addicted to imitation. People don't know who they are. They only know what gets likes, what fits in, what trends. It's not a society, it's a stage. And most are acting happy, acting spiritual. Their smiles are rehearsed. Their energy is staged. And then there's you. You're not performing. You're present. You don't need a mask because you face the face beneath it. You don't need applause because you've already approved of your own soul. And that realness is revolutionary. Because when someone walks into a room without pretending, they shake the entire script. You don't say much, but people feel it. You don't chase attention, but you pull eyes. Why? Because you're not trying to impress, you're just being. And that energy is foreign to those surviving through personas. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Most people avoid that. They layer themselves with filters and borrowed truths. But you chose the hard road. You chose wholeness over applause. You chose truth over trend. You showed up as you are, even if it meant losing people who only knew the costume. And when you become that rare, you become a threat. Not because you harm, but because you expose. Your silence exposes noise. Your depth exposes shallowness. Your groundedness exposes chaos. People will say, "You're intimidating. You've changed. You think you're better." But none of that is true. You didn't change. You returned to yourself. You didn't become better. You became real. And the world doesn't know what to do with someone who's not begging to belong. Because society runs on fakeness. And you, just being real, becomes an act of rebellion. To become whole is to become a force, Jung taught. And a force does not ask permission. It doesn't wait for validation. It doesn't dilute itself to comfort others. It simply exists, fully, fiercely, and unapologetically. You are that force. And yes, your rarity will disturb people, because you reflect what they've been avoiding. You are living proof that another way exists. A life beyond pretending. A life beyond the script. A life where your soul leads, not your mask, and only the real ones will recognize it. The rest, let them fall away. Because your presence was never meant to entertain the crowd. It was meant to awaken the few. You are not just rare, you are real. And in this era of imitation, that makes you dangerous. In the most beautiful way. Chapter 9. Your silence speaks louder than their noise. When you've met your soul, small talk dies and silence becomes sacred. You've probably noticed it by now. The more healed you become, the quieter you get. The more real you become, the less you need to explain. The more whole you become, the less tolerance you have for noise, not just external, but energetic. You're not running from anyone. You're not above anyone, but your spirit has outgrown the chaos that most people still call connection. You see through the masks now. You sense the agendas behind the smiles. You feel the desperation behind their performance, and rather than trying to correct it, you simply withdraw, not from people, but from pretending. Because your silence? It's not emptiness, it's power, it's clarity. It's the calm that comes after you've faced every storm inside yourself and realized you no longer need to scream to be heard. In fact, most of your power now lives in what you don't say. You walk into a room and say nothing, yet people feel everything. Not because you're loud, but because your energy has become a mirror. One that doesn't flatter, but reflects. Carl Jung believed that as a person moves through individuation, their outer expression becomes simpler, yet more potent, because they're no longer fragmented. They've become the home they were always searching for. And when you reach that point, your silence becomes louder than anyone's shouting. It's why you don't argue anymore. You don't explain your boundaries. You don't beg to be understood. Because peace is your new currency, and you're no longer willing to bankrupt your soul for temporary belonging. The world will call it arrogance, but it's really self-respect, because you've learned not every opinion deserves a response. Not every invitation is sacred. Not every connection is real, so you choose peace, you choose space, you choose quiet strength over noisy survival. And yes, this unnerves people. They're used to drama. They're addicted to reaction. So when you don't respond, they panic, they chase, or worse, they try to provoke. But don't be fooled. That's just noise trying to pull you back into a world you've outgrown. A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them. Carl Jung. And you? You've walked through that inferno. You've sat in the darkness and found your own light. So now when chaos knocks, you don't answer. Because peace isn't just your lifestyle, it's your boundary, it's your frequency. And that frequency, it doesn't shout, it doesn't convince, it simply radiates, and everything not aligned with it either rises or disappears. So let your silence keep speaking. Let it confuse the shallow and comfort the deep. Let it draw the real and repel the fake. Because at this level, you're not looking to be heard, you're living to be felt. And that's louder than anything noise could ever offer. Chapter 10. You weren't born to fit in, you were born to break the frequency. If your soul doesn't match the noise of the world, it's because you were never designed to echo it, you were designed to disrupt it. Let's get one thing clear. You didn't come here to play small. You didn't come here to memorize the script, smile at the right time, wear the mask and die quietly. You came here to shake something, to awaken something, first in yourself, then in others. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be real. And realness is loud even in silence. You've felt it, haven't you? That quiet restlessness in your spirit. Even when everything looked fine on the outside, there was always a deeper voice inside you whispering, "This isn't it." And that voice, that wasn't doubt. That was your soul calling you out of the noise. Your true self rising underneath the noise, begging you to stop shrinking into versions of yourself that made others comfortable. Because the truth is, fitting in is easy. Dying inside while doing it, that's the part nobody talks about. Carl Jung wrote that wholeness is the goal of the human journey, not perfection. But wholeness requires soul rebellion. It means walking away from the version of yourself shaped by fear, shame, and approval addiction. It means standing in your truth even if your knees shake. It means being misunderstood, misread, and mislabeled, but still refusing to become something you're not. You weren't born to entertain people's illusions. You were born to awaken their truth. And sometimes that means becoming the storm they weren't ready for. The world will ask you who you are. If you do not know, the world will tell you. Carl Jung. And you? You chose not to let the world decide. You turned inward. You confronted your own shadow. You walked into the parts of yourself others spend lifetimes avoiding. You stitched your wounds into wisdom. And now you carry a presence that cannot be explained, only felt. People say there's something about you. And they're right. There is. It's the calm in your voice that comes from surviving emotional wars. It's the softness in your eyes that hides fire. It's the way your presence silences the room without effort. It's the way your soul no longer plays in frequencies that don't feel like home. You are not for everyone, and that's your power. You disturb their comfort, because your alignment exposes their fragmentation. You mirror their potential, and that reflection hurts when they've spent their life avoiding it. But hear me clearly. You are not too much. You are just no longer shrinking, and people who benefited from your silence will not celebrate your voice. Let them go. Let them misunderstand you. Let them call you cold, distant, intense, strange. Because your soul didn't come here to be explained. It came here to be expressed. You are not an echo. You are the original sound, a frequency that breaks illusions. A frequency that calls people home to themselves. And yes, this path is lonely, but this loneliness, it's sacred. It's the space where your higher self meets your purpose, where you stop seeking the world and start becoming what the world desperately needs. So walk boldly, speak truthfully, love deeply, stand silently when the noise gets too loud. Because some of us weren't born to fit the world. We were born to change its frequency. Chapter 11. You're not intense. They're just unconscious. You weren't made to dim your fire, and you were made to light up the places others fear to look. Ever been told, you're too deep? You feel too much. You think too far. You've been labeled dramatic, intense, even too emotional. But here's the truth, you're not too much. They're too disconnected, too numbed, too rehearsed in their small talk, too scared of their own depth to meet you in yours. Your emotional honesty? It feels dangerous to those still lying to themselves. That's not a flaw, that's your gift. In a world where people confuse numbness with strength and sarcasm with intelligence, your raw presence threatens the illusion. Because you don't flirt with life. You dive in. You don't skim the surface. You plunge into meaning. Your words carry weight. Your silences speak volumes. And that level of presence, it's uncomfortable for people who've built their identity on avoiding the very truths you live by. Carl Jung said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. You face yours daily. That's why they call you intense. Because when you walk into the room, you don't just bring conversation. You bring confrontation. Not with them, with themselves. Your questions aren't polite. They're penetrating. You ask what they've buried. You notice what they've ignored. And they might laugh it off or label you too much, but deep down, their soul recognizes what their ego resents. You're real. And realness, in a world addicted to illusion, is always misunderstood first and respected later. You were never meant to be easy to digest. You were meant to be a soul disruptor, a revealer of depth in a world drunk on distraction. You were meant to stir the sleeping, to call people inward, to whisper truths their masks can't ignore. So stop explaining your intensity. Stop apologizing for your clarity. Stop shrinking your essence to fit into rooms that choke on anything real. You are not intense. You are awakened. And awakening has never been quiet. It always shakes, breaks, and remakes everything in its path. So when they ghost you, gossip about you, or twist your truth into discomfort, remember, they are reacting to a version of themselves they've been avoiding. You simply reminded them it exists. And that reminder, that's a mirror. And mirrors never lie. You're not here to be easily understood. You're here to be felt, deeply. You're here to be remembered, long after the noise fades. Because while they were playing roles, you were living soul. And that kind of presence isn't just intense, it's unforgettable. Chapter 12. You weren't abandoned, you were initiated. The people who left didn't reject you. They redirected you toward yourself. It didn't break you. It woke you up. The silence, the ghosting, the betrayal, the slow fade. At first it felt like punishment, but it was really preparation. They didn't see your worth. Good, because now you're finally seeing it. You kept asking, why did they leave? But the better question was, what part of myself was I ignoring just to keep them close? Carl Jung said, your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. And when you looked, you didn't just find pain, you found purpose. The abandonment didn't ruin you, it revealed you, it showed you who was real, what was real, and most of all, who you had to become when you had no one else to lean on. Loneliness isn't always emptiness. Sometimes it's sacred space. It's where your soul does surgery, where your masks fall, and your truth rises. People left, but pain stayed. And that pain became your teacher. Your silence became your strength. And your aloneness became your alignment. You begged for closure, but life gave you awakening. You asked for answers, but the universe gave you solitude, so loud it echoed your own voice back to you. The one you forgot, the one you buried, the one you silenced for love that never loved you back. But now that voice is rising, not bitter, not broken, but bold, because you finally realized the people who couldn't meet your depth were never meant to walk your path. They weren't soulmates. They were soul mirrors, showing you everything you had to heal. So let them go, with grace, with peace, with power, because you're not abandoned, you're ascending. And not everyone has the lungs for your altitude. Your presence is no longer available to those who only showed up when it was convenient. You're not chasing anymore. You're attracting not people but alignment, not company but connection, not followers but frequency. The path of awakening is lonely, but it's also liberating, and every loss that felt like death was actually your rebirth. Carl Jung said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." So choose this version of you, the one who doesn't beg to be seen, the one who no longer waits for closure, the one who knows you weren't abandoned. You were chosen by life to begin again, wiser, fiercer, freer. Let the world think you've changed, because you have. You've evolved. And that evolution, it's irreversible. This time, you're not losing yourself to be loved. You're becoming so whole, love will have to rise to meet you. Chapter 13. Your presence is a frequency, not a performance. You don't attract attention by performing, you attract alignment by vibrating. There was a time you tried to be liked, to fit in, to impress. You adjusted your voice, softened your opinions, edited your truth, just to be accepted by people who didn't even accept themselves. And what did it cost? Your peace, your power, your presence. But that version of you is gone. Because now you realize you were never meant to perform. You were meant to resonate. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And when you finally step into that truth, you stop chasing validation. You stop apologizing for your vibe. Because presence isn't about being loud. It's about being aligned. It's about showing up with an energy that doesn't beg, doesn't force, and it just is. People can't always name it, but they feel it. That's why they stare. That's why they shift. That's why they get nervous around you. It's not intimidation, it's recognition. Their soul knows what their ego is afraid to admit. You're different. You didn't get here overnight. You earned this energy. You broke cycles. You cried in silence. You sat with your wounds and stitched them into wisdom. You chose solitude over fake company. You chose healing over hiding. And now your presence carries the weight of that journey. People sense it. Your walk says, "I've been through fire and I didn't come out empty." Your eyes say, "I've seen the darkness and I'm no longer afraid." You don't just enter spaces, you transform them. Because your energy doesn't blend in, it shifts the frequency, and not everyone is ready for that. Some will feel safe around you, others will feel exposed. Because your peace feels like confrontation to those addicted to chaos. Your silence feels threatening to those who only know noise. Your truth feels too raw for those still pretending. They'll label you too intense, too cold, too much. But you're not too much. They've just never met someone who isn't playing a role. You don't mirror their projections. You reflect their potential. And that reflection, it shakes people who have avoided themselves for years. So stop over-explaining. Stop lowering your vibration to comfort those still hiding in survival mode. You're not meant to dim your light for the blind. You're not responsible for how others interpret your energy. Let them misunderstand you. Let them fall away. Because what you're carrying now isn't for everyone. It's for those who are ready to evolve. Your presence is sacred. It's a reminder that authenticity exists, that peace is possible, that truth doesn't need a spotlight. It creates one. You don't need a stage. You are the stage, so protect your presence. It took decades of inner war to earn this stillness. You didn't just survive, you alchemized. You turned heartbreak into harmony, chaos into calm, wounds into wisdom, and now every room you walk into knows it, without a word. That's why they feel you, that's why they remember you. Not for what you did, but for what you didn't need to do. You were real. And in a world full of performers, realness is unforgettable. You're not just alive, you're aligned. And alignment, that's the new power. You. Chapter 14. You're not lost. You're being redirected by the soul. You're not off track. You're on a deeper path most people never dare to walk. Let's be real. It doesn't feel like awakening when it's happening. It feels like confusion, disconnection. Nothing excites you like it used to. The people around you feel foreign. Your goals don't motivate you anymore. And you ask yourself, what's wrong with me? But here's the truth. Nothing is wrong. You're not breaking down. You're breaking open. You're not lost. You've outgrown the map. You're being rerouted, not by society, but by the soul. Carl Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. And that pain you're feeling, that's not a problem. That's your old identity dissolving. The version of you that lived for validation, applause, and safety is dying. And the real you, the one beyond conditioning, roles, and fear, is trying to rise. But that rebirth comes with fire. That's why the silence is so loud. That's why the confusion is so sharp. It's not depression, it's a soul redirection. The universe is stripping you, not to hurt you, but to show you who you've always been underneath the performance. This is the sacred in between. You're not who you used to be, but not yet who you're becoming. And that liminal space? It's holy, it's brutal, it's quiet. It's the space where the ego panics, but the soul whispers, "Stay here, don't rush. Something beautiful is unfolding." This isn't a breakdown, it's a soul quake. Everything false is falling away. Everything fake is being stripped. And what's left behind is the truth. Unfiltered, unmasked, unapologetic. You're not lost. You're just being emptied, so something real can finally enter. You're not meant to go back to who you were. That version of you was a survival strategy. It was brilliant, but it was built on fear. And now your soul is ready for something deeper. It's why you can't tolerate certain people anymore. Why meaningless conversations exhaust you. Why your old dreams feel hollow. You're being refined, not rejected, and refinement requires fire. This is alchemy, the slow burning away of illusion until all that's left is essence, raw, real, radiant. You're not broken, you're becoming. People might not understand this phase. They'll say you've changed. They'll call you distant, cold, lost, but you're not lost. You're just not available for noise anymore. You're not available for fakeness, for performance, for pretending. You're not chasing, you're aligning, not speaking to be heard, but waiting to be felt. You're not running from the world. You're meeting your inner world for the first time, and in that meeting, you'll remember what wholeness feels like. You'll remember you and before the world told you who to be. So don't rush this. Don't label it a crisis. Don't try to fix what's simply shifting. Let the old fall, let the silence grow, let the mystery stretch you, because transformation isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a slow surrender. And when it's done, you won't be polished. You'll be pure. Carl Jung said, "What you resist not only persists, but grows in size." So stop resisting. Flow. Trust the rerouting. You're not lost. You're exactly where your soul wants to rebuild you, from the ashes of everything that wasn't true. Chapter 15. Your energy is a portal. Not everyone is meant to enter. You are not just a person. You are a frequency, a vibration, a sacred portal. Let's be honest, not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone should be allowed to sit in your energy, breathe your peace, or drink from the well you built out of your own pain. Because your aura, it's not decoration, it's sacred architecture, built through heartbreak, forged in silence, refined through fire. Carl Jung said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. And your presence? It's not neutral, it transforms people, as for better or worse. That's why they feel you before they hear you. That's why they stare. That's why they project. Some feel peace around you. Others feel panic, because your aura confronts what they've buried. It doesn't flatter, it reflects. You don't just meet people, you reveal them, their masks, their wounds, their potential, and sometimes they mistake that revelation as threat. But it's not your job to make them ready, it's your job to stay real. Because you weren't born to be emotionally available for everyone. You weren't born to be the safe space for people who poison you. You weren't born to keep bleeding just to keep the peace. You are a portal, not a playground, a threshold, not a therapist. And your energy, it's sacred ground. It doesn't need to be understood by everyone, only honored by those ready to evolve. You're not here to fix them, you're here to stay whole. Let them feel what they feel. But don't shrink just because they don't understand your shine. You've spent years cleaning your vibration, burning through illusions, sitting with shadows, healing lineage. You are not just kind, you are clear. You are not just loving, you are luminous. So now is the time to protect what you've built, to guard your energy like a temple, to choose discernment over default. Everyone can see you, but not everyone should reach you, because not all energy is aligned, and not every connection is sacred. Some are simply karmic distractions sent to test your boundaries. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And you? You've accepted yourself enough to finally say, no more leeches, no more draining souls, no more false access. You don't owe your light to people still married to their shadows. You don't owe your energy to those who misuse it. And you don't owe your time to those who confuse your stillness for weakness. This is not ego. This is alignment. This is spiritual hygiene, because your peace is power. And power without protection becomes punishment. So here's your truth. You are not cold, you are guarded for good reason. You are not mean, you are selective, because you know what it costs to be careless. You are not difficult. You are divinely designed to challenge the surface level and call forth the sacred. You are a portal, and portals don't let just anyone walk through. They open for the ready. They reject the reckless. And you're finally ready to honor that. You're finally ready to protect your frequency like your life depends on it. Because it does. Chapter 16. You are the medicine. But even medicine needs protection. You're the light in a room full of flickering bulbs, but even light has limits. You heal without trying. You calm chaos just by being present. You inspire truth without speaking it. You are the medicine. But what no one tells you is, even medicine can be misused. Even peace can be poisoned. Even sacred souls can be drained. Because the world doesn't always love what it needs. Sometimes it fears it. Sometimes it attacks it. Sometimes it uses it until it's empty. Carl Jung said, "No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." And you've been to hell, quietly. You've sat in the fire while they danced in the illusion. You've alchemized your pain while they laughed at your silence. And now you walk with calm, not because you were spared, but because you survived. You are the medicine. But hear this. Just because you can carry their wounds doesn't mean you should. Just because you see their potential doesn't mean they'll rise. You are not a rehab center for broken egos. You are not a sponge for their shadows. You are sacred space, and sacred space must be protected. People will come to you for healing and leave when they feel whole, forgetting the cost. They'll drink from your energy, but never ask if you're thirsty. They'll confess to your silence, and then abandon your depth. This isn't bitterness. It's a pattern, and the pattern only breaks when you do. Set the boundary. Say the no. Honor your limits like they are commandments, because you can't pour if your well is dry. And no, protecting your peace doesn't make you cruel. It makes you clear, and clarity, that's what true medicine is made of. You're not hard to love, you're hard to use. You're not cold. You're just no longer available for emotional manipulation disguised as connection. You're not distant, you're just finally aware of your worth. And now, you don't chase. You attract. With energy so refined, only those who've done the work will feel safe around you. Carl Jung said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate what matters." And you've outgrown shallow talk. Now you crave soul, or nothing at all. So here's your sacred reminder. You don't owe your energy to everyone who asks for it. You don't owe your healing to people who harmed you. You don't owe your time to people who only show up when they need something. You are the medicine. But even medicine has dosage. You must be given with care, with respect, with consent. You are not public property. You are divine technology, ancient, raw, electric. So stop explaining your power to people who'd rather dim it, and start living like you're the sacred force you already are. Protect your peace. Guard your light. Rest without guilt. Say no without explanation. Walk away without drama. Because the next level of your evolution doesn't require you to prove yourself. It requires you to preserve yourself. Let them feel the loss of your absence. Let them realize your worth in your silence. You are the medicine, and medicine doesn't chase. It waits for those ready to heal. So now stop explaining. Stop pouring. Stop saving. Just be the medicine. And let your frequency do the work. Chapter 17. Not everyone was meant to stay. Some were meant to activate you. They didn't betray you. They revealed you. The ones who hurt you? The ones who left without explanation? The ones who couldn't meet your depth, even though you begged them to try? They weren't mistakes. They were mirrors. They weren't meant to walk your whole path. They were only meant to awaken something sacred in you. Something you would have never seen without the pain. Carl Jung said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But your pain forced you inward, and there you finally met yourself." Let's be honest, you didn't grow from comfort. You grew from contrast. You didn't awaken through praise. You awakened through absence. It wasn't the ones who stayed that changed you the most. It was the ones who vanished. They pulled the rug. They triggered your shadow. They exposed your deepest wounds, and in doing so, they unintentionally gave you the keys to your own healing. You screamed, you shattered, you knelt in the ashes, and when it was quiet again, you rebuilt, wiser, cleaner, stronger, more you than you had ever been before. You stopped begging, you started becoming, you stopped performing, you started protecting, you stopped bleeding for people who never brought a bandage. And in that sacred space of pain, you found peace. You realized closure doesn't come from them. It comes from clarity. And clarity said, they were never supposed to understand you. They were only supposed to activate you. Their role wasn't to stay. It was to break you open, so your true self could finally breathe. Their exit was the beginning of your rebirth. So stop hating the chapters that hurt you. They held the codes to your evolution. Stop resenting the people who left. They couldn't go where your soul was headed. They were karmic catalysts, not permanent fixtures. Carl Jung said, "We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life. And sometimes we meet ourselves through heartbreak, through being ghosted, through being misunderstood. But each experience carved us. Each wound shaped us. Until what remained wasn't broken, it was blessed." You are not abandoned. You are being refined. You are not unloved. You are being realigned. Now you don't chase, you choose. Now you don't perform, you protect. Now you don't lower your frequency to be accepted. You raise your standards to be respected. You don't need everyone to stay. You just need the right ones to recognize you. And trust me, the ones meant for your frequency won't flinch at your truth. They won't fear your fire. They'll feel safe in your intensity, because they've walked through their own flames. So let the rest go. Let the unfinished stories stay unfinished. Let the people who don't call and stay silent. Let the cycles that drained you finally end. Because now you understand, not everyone was your forever. Some were your fuse. And once they lit your transformation, their purpose was complete. You didn't lose them. You found you. And in this new version of yourself, there's no room for performance. Only presence, only peace, only purpose. This is your era of sacred solitude and soulful alignment. Protect it like your life depends on it, because it does. Chapter 18. The healed version of you will scare the people who benefited from your wounds. You weren't too much. You were just too unhealed to see who was draining you. There was a time you bent until you shattered, a time you explained until your throat hurt, a time you overgave because you thought that's what love was. You carried people who would have watched you drown. And they liked you that way, wounded, unaware, easy to manipulate, because a broken version of you was convenient. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." But you woke up. And when you woke up, you started setting boundaries. And suddenly you were selfish, you started speaking truth, and now you're aggressive. You stopped chasing, now you're cold. But the truth is, you healed. And your healing exposed the fact that some relationships only existed because you were hurting. Your people-pleasing was their control. Your silence was their safety. Your lack of self-worth made them feel important. Now you're free, and your freedom is terrifying to those who once fed on your confusion. They'll say, "You've changed." They're right. You've changed so much that you no longer recognize your past self, the version who begged to be loved instead of loving herself. You no longer entertain what drains you. You no longer tolerate guilt-tripping disguised as love. You no longer shrink just to fit inside someone's comfort zone. You stopped bleeding for those who never offered a bandage. And in that sacred silence, you became whole. Wholeness doesn't chase. It attracts, it protects, it sits in peace, and watches the chaos destroy itself. Carl Jung said, "Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration." And that's what you did. You integrated the shadow. You honored your anger. You loved your wounded parts. You stitched your trauma into a throne. And now your energy is clean. Now your standards are high. Now your time is sacred. So don't be surprised if old connections start falling off. They didn't love the real you. They loved the version of you that needed them. But that version no longer exists. You're no longer waiting to be chosen. You've chosen yourself, and that choice, it cost you comfort, familiarity, fake love, and shallow validation. But what it gave you was you. Not the filtered, polite, dimmed-down version. The real you. The one who sees clearly, speaks truthfully, loves fiercely, but only when it's mutual. You're not hard to love. You're just hard to manipulate now. And those who once thrived on your brokenness will label your healing as ego. Let them. Because what they call ego is actually boundaries. If even one line in this journey echoed inside you, if one moment made you feel seen, then this is for you. You are not too much. You are not too intense. You are not intimidating. You are just true. And truth in a world built on illusion, it feels like disruption. Don't shrink because of that. Don't apologize for your frequency. Your aura is not just a vibe. It's the result of your pain, your growth, your soul work. You didn't stumble into this energy. You earned it. With your tears, with your silence, with your courage to choose evolution over approval. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And you're living that privilege, even if it makes people uncomfortable, even if they misjudge you, even if it means walking alone, because you were never sent here to blend in. You were sent to awaken, to disrupt the illusion, to be a mirror, a storm, a sacred space, not for the many, but for the ready. So if they flinch at your energy, let them. If they run from your truth, bless them. If they say you've changed, thank them, because you have. You've become you. And now, don't dim, don't shrink, don't edit yourself into smaller boxes just to be digestible. Your energy is not for pleasing, it's for piercing, it's for activating, it's for reminding others of what it feels like to be fully alive. So when you walk into rooms, don't wonder if they'll like you. Ask yourself, will your presence wake them up? That's your power, not the noise, not the applause, but your ability to radiate truth in a world that forgot how to feel, shine, even if it shakes the room. Because what this world needs most now is you.